The folks in Hollow Creek, nestled deep in the Appalachian hills of eastern Kentucky, had long believed that some things were simply meant to stay broken. But on a fog-shrouded April morning, when Sarah Mitchell discovered something impossible along the abandoned railroad tracks, she would learn that redemption often arrives in the most unexpected forms. What she found that day would not only change her life forever, but would breathe new hope into a dying coal town that had forgotten how to dream. Before we continue with this remarkable journey, hit that like button if you believe in second chances, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another incredible story. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community. The morning mist clung to the hollows like smoke from the old coal fires, and Sarah Mitchell picked her way carefully along the rusted railroad tracks that hadn't seen a train in over 15 years. At 42, she had the cautious movements of someone who had learned the hard way. That trust was earned, not given. Her dark hair, strewn with premature gray, was pulled back in a practical braid, and her worn hiking boots spoke of miles walked in solitude. Sarah had come back to Hollow Creek 8 months ago with nothing but a duffel bag and a determination to disappear after her pottery business had collapsed in Asheville, taking her savings and her confidence with it. She'd retreated to the only place that had ever felt like home, even though home was now just a memory wrapped in boarded up storefronts and faded for sale signs. She was staying at her grandmother's old house on the edge of town, a sagging Victorian that needed more repairs than she could afford. To make ends meet, she'd taken a job at the Hollow Creek Community Center, teaching art classes to kids whose parents were struggling just as hard as she was. It wasn't much, but it kept the electricity on and gave her a reason to get out of bed each morning. The railroad tracks had become her meditation path, a 2-mile loop through the woods that allowed her to think, or more accurately, to avoid thinking. She walked them every morning before work, rain or shine, finding a strange comfort in the decay and abandonment that mirrored her own sense of displacement. But this morning was different. Sarah heard it before she saw it. A rhythmic sound that didn't belong to the forest. Something between a wheeze and a groan. She stopped walking, every sense suddenly alert. The sound came again, and she realized with a jolt that it was labored breathing, desperate and struggling. She left the tracks and pushed through a tangle of wild rot and following the sound deeper into the woods. The morning fog made everything dreamlike and disorienting, but she pressed forward until she emerged into a clearing that took her breath away. There, in a space where the old railroad company had once stored equipment, stood a horse unlike any she had ever seen. The animal was a pale dappled gray, almost silver in the filtered morning light, with a coat that might have been beautiful if it weren't matted with mud and neglect. But it was the rope that made Sarah's stomach turn. Thick climbing rope had been wound around the horse's legs in an intricate web, hobbling the animal so thoroughly that it could barely move. The rope extended to an old railroad tie, anchoring the horse to the ground. The animal's legs were rubbed raw where the rope had cut into flesh, and Sarah could see that it had been here for days, maybe longer. The horse's head hung low, its breathing Shallow and uneven, its ribs protruded sharply, and one eye was swollen nearly shut. But when Sarah approached, the animal raised its head slightly, and their eyes met. What Sarah saw in that moment pierced straight through every wall she'd built around her heart. A desperate plea that transcended species. A question asked by one broken soul to another. Have you come to help? Or have you come to watch me die? Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, only to remember that cell service didn't reach this deep into the hollow. She looked around frantically and spotted something that made her blood run cold. A cardboard sign propped against a tree. The words scrolled in black marker. Free to good home. Can't keep her anymore. Someone tried to break her for writing and failed. She's dangerous and won't be tamed. Her name is Stardust. Maybe you'll have better luck. Sarah knelt beside the dying horse and placed her hand gently on Stardust's neck. The animal flinched but didn't pull away. I'm going to help you, Sarah whispered, surprised by the conviction in her own voice. I promise you. I'm going to get you out of here. Stardust's ear flickered toward her, and Sarah could have sworn she saw a glimmer of understanding in that one good eye. Sarah ran. She ran faster than she had in years, back along the tracks toward town, her lungs burning and her heart pounding. She burst into Doc Harlan's veterinary clinic 20 minutes later, startling the elderly vet who was preparing for his first appointment of the day. Doc, I need your help. She gasped, doubled over, and trying to catch her breath. There's a horse out by the old railroad depot. It's dying. Someone left it tied up to die. Doc. Harland was 73 years old and had been treating animals in Hollow Creek since before Sarah was born. He'd seen a lot of cruelty in his years, but something in Sarah's voice made him grab his emergency kit without asking questions. They drove as far as they could in Doc's ancient pickup truck, then hiked the rest of the way. When they reached Stardust, Doc Harlan went very still. He walked slowly around the horse, examining her condition with practiced eyes, and Sarah watched his jaw tighten with anger. Whoever did this should be in jail, he said quietly. He looked at Sarah with an expression that was equal parts sympathy and doubt. Miss Sarah, I'm going to be honest with you. Even if we get her untied and back to my clinic, the chances of her surviving are slim. She's severely dehydrated, malnourished, and those wounds are badly infected. The kindest thing might be to put her down right here. No. The word came out sharper than Sarah intended. No, Doc. Please. We have to try. Doc Harland studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, then. Let's get to work. Freeing Stardust took nearly 3 hours. The ropes had been tied with the kind of complexity that spoke of deliberate cruelty, designed not just to restrain, but to cause maximum pain with any movement. Doc Harlan had to cut through dozens of knots, working carefully to avoid causing Stardust more injury. Throughout the ordeal, Sarah stayed at Stardust's head, talking to her in a low, steady voice. She told the Horse about the hills around Hollow Creek, about the meadow behind her. Grandmother's house where wild flowers grew in the spring, about the clear creek that ran cold and clean even in the height of summer. She wasn't sure if Stardust understood, but the horse seemed calmer when she talked, her breathing more regular. When the last rope finally fell away, Stardust didn't immediately try to stand. The horse lay there, sides heaving as if she couldn't quite believe she was truly free. Doc Harlan administered fluids and antibiotics, muttering the whole time about people who shouldn't be allowed within a mile of any animal. "All right, Miss Sarah," he said when he'd done everything he could. "Now comes the hard part. We need to get her on her feet and back to the clinic. If she can't walk, we're going to have to call for a livestock trailer, and that's going to take time she might not have." Sarah knelt beside Stardust's head again. "Come on, girl," she whispered. "You've made it this far. Don't give up now. Stand up for me, please." Stardust's eye opened wider, focusing on Sarah's face. And then, with a groan that seemed to come from the depths of her being, the horse began to struggle to her feet. It took 3 attempts, each one more painful to watch than the last, but finally, Stardust stood swaying on trembling legs. The journey back to the clinic was agonizing. They could only move a few yards at a time before Stardust needed to rest. What should have been a 20-minute walk stretched into 4 hours. But Stardust kept going, putting one damaged hoof in front of the other, her gaze locked on Sarah, who walked backward in front of her the entire way, encouraging her forward. When they finally reached Doc Harlan's clinic, a small crowd had gathered. News traveled fast in Hollow Creek, and word of Sarah's rescue mission had spread through town. People stood in clusters, watching as the emaciated gray horse stumbled into the barn. Among the crowd was James Trent, who owned the struggling hardware store on Main Street. He'd been a friend of Sarah's grandmother and had checked on Sarah a few times since she'd moved back to town. Now he stepped forward with a wad of cash in his hand. "Doc's going to need supplies to treat her," James said, simply pressing the money into Sarah's hand. "This should help get you started." Others followed. Martha Perkins from the diner brought bags of sweet feed she'd bought from the feed store. The Rodriguez family, who ran the last working farm in the area, promised to donate hay. Even old Ruth Blackwell, who was known for being the stingiest person in 3 counties, showed up with antibacterial ointment and bandages. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she watched her community, a community she thought was too broken to care about anything, rally around one dying horse. Over the next few weeks, Stardust became the talk of Hollow Creek. Doc Harlan set up a cot in his barn so Sarah could stay with Stardust around the clock. The horse required constant care, regular wound cleaning, carefully measured feeding to avoid refeeding syndrome, physical therapy to strengthen her damaged legs. Sarah threw herself into Stardust care with an intensity that surprised even her. She woke up every 3 hours to check on the horse, learned to administer medications and dress wounds, and spend hours each Day simply sitting with Stardust, talking to her about everything and nothing. The transformation was slow, but unmistakable. The raw wounds on Stardust's legs began to heal, leaving scars that would never fully fade, but no longer caused obvious pain. The horse's ribs became less prominent as her body adjusted to regular nutrition. Most remarkably, her coat began to recover its luster, the dappled gray, brightening until it truly did shine like polished silver. But the most dramatic change was in Stardust's demeanor. The defeated, broken animal that Sarah had found in the woods gradually gave way to something entirely different. Stardust began to nick her softly when Sarah entered the barn. She would follow Sarah around the paddock like an oversized dog, gently bumping her with her nose in what Sarah came to recognize as affection. "I've never seen anything like it," Doc Harlan told Sarah one evening as they watched Stardust graze peacefully in the small pasture behind the clinic. Most horses that have been through that kind of trauma never fully recover. Psychologically, they're either aggressive or terrified for the rest of their lives. But Stardust, she's different. It's like she understood that. You saved her and decided to trust again. Sarah felt a lump in her throat. "I think we saved each other," she said quietly. As Stardust grew stronger, something unexpected began to happen. People started coming by the clinic just to see her. At first, it was curiosity. Everyone wanted to see the horse that Sarah Mitchell had rescued from the abandoned railroad depot, but it quickly became something more. Tommy Wilcox, an 8-year-old boy who stuttered so badly he rarely spoke at all, stood at Stardust's fence for an hour one Saturday afternoon. Stardust walked over to him, lowered her head, and stood perfectly still. Tommy reached through the fence and stroked her nose, and then in a voice clearer than his parents had heard in months, he whispered, "You're so pretty." His mother burst into tears. After that, word spread. Parents began bringing children who were struggling with anxiety, with behavioral issues, with learning disabilities. Stardust seemed to have an intuitive ability to sense what each child needed. With hyperactive children, she remained calm and steady, providing a grounding presence. With fearful children, she approached slowly and gently, never pushing, always patient. With angry children, she simply stood and accepted their presence without judgment. Sarah found herself becoming a facilitator of these interactions, learning through trial and error how to create safe spaces for children to connect with Stardust. She set up a schedule so that the visits didn't overwhelm the horse, and she established ground rules about respect and gentleness. The changes in the children were remarkable. Tommy's stutter improved dramatically. 11-year-old Emma Cooper, who had been hospitalized twice for severe anxiety, began sleeping through the night after her sessions with Stardust. A group of troubled teenagers from the high school, kids who had been labeled as troublemakers and dropouts, started showing up every afternoon to help with Stardust's care. One of those teenagers was John Clark, a 17-year-old with a reputation for fighting and a string of suspensions. John had been headed for juvenile detention when his court-appointed counselors suggested he do community Service at the clinic instead. John arrived on his first day with a chip on his shoulder the size of Kentucky, making it clear he thought taking care of a horse was stupid and beneath him. But Sarah saw something in his eyes that looked familiar. The same desperate uncertainty she saw in her own mirror every morning. "Here's the deal," Sarah told him. "You show up on time, you work hard, and you treat Stardust with respect. Do that and we'll get along fine. Can you handle that?" John shrugged, his standard response to everything. But Sarah noticed that when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression softened as he watched Stardust. Over the following weeks, John transformed before Sarah's eyes. The angry teenager who had shown up that first day gradually gave way to someone gentler, more thoughtful. He started arriving early and staying late. He was meticulous about Stardust's care, brushing her coat until it gleamed and ensuring her stall was immaculate. One evening, Sarah found John sitting in Stardust's stall, his back against the wall, talking quietly to the horse. She hung back, not wanting to intrude, but she could hear fragments of what he was saying. "My dad left when I was 6. John whispered. "Mom works 2 jobs, and she's always tired. I know I make things harder for her. I just don't know how to be different, you know. I'm so angry all the time and I don't even know why." Stardust stood patiently, her head lowered near John's shoulder, and Sarah watched as the teenager's shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. The horse didn't move, didn't pull away, just offered her presence as John cried. Sarah quietly backed away, her own eyes wet with tears. As summer arrived and Stardust reached full health, Sarah made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She would formalize what had been happening organically. She would create an actual equine therapy program. The idea was audacious. Sarah had no formal training in therapy, no credentials beyond a bachelor's degree in art. But she had Stardust and she had witnessed miracles that no amount of training could explain. She spent weeks researching, reaching out to established equine therapy programs across the country, learning about best practices and legal requirements. She worked with Doc Harlan to ensure Stardust's health and well-being would always be the top priority. She consulted with local therapists and counselors who were intrigued by what they'd heard about Stardust's impact. The biggest obstacle was finding a suitable location. Doc Harlan's clinic was too small, and Sarah's grandmother's property, while large enough, needed extensive repairs before it could house a program safely. The solution came from an unexpected source. Robert Keene owned the old Keene Estate, a 100-acre property on the outskirts of Hollow Creek that had been in his family for 5 generations. The land had been unused for years, gradually falling into disrepair as Robert struggled to maintain it alone. Robert had heard about Stardust and about Sarah's plans. He showed up at Doc Harlan's clinic one June morning with a proposal that left Sarah speechless. "I'm 76 years old," Robert said bluntly. "I have no kids, no heirs who give a damn about this land. I've been watching Hollow Creek die for 20 years, and I'm tired of it. What you're doing with that course, that matters. So, here's what I'm offering. You can use 40 acres of my property for your program. No rent, no strings attached. All I ask is that you let me help out when I can. I used to work with horses when I was young, and I miss it. Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. And Robert nodded back, understanding everything she couldn't say. The Stardust Hope Center officially opened in September, and it was a true community effort. James Trent donated materials from his hardware store. Local contractors volunteered their labor to build fencing and renovate an old barn. The high school shop class built mounting blocks and therapy equipment. Under John Clark's surprising leadership, Martha Perkins organized fundraising dinners at her diner, and the entire town seemed to mobilize around this shared project. Additional horses were carefully selected and trained to work alongside Stardust, though everyone agreed that Stardust remained the heart of the program. Sarah convinced a licensed therapist from the next county to partner with the center, and together they developed a curriculum that combined traditional therapy techniques with hands-on horse care and riding. The program grew beyond anything Sarah had imagined. Families drove from across eastern Kentucky to participate. A partnership with the VA brought veterans struggling with PTSD. Local schools began referring students with behavioral issues. The waiting list stretched for months, but Stardust remained the center of it all. The Silver Mayor seemed to have unlimited patience and an uncanny ability to sense exactly what each person needed. A child who needed structure would find Stardust calmly maintaining boundaries. An adult who needed acceptance would find Stardust offering unconditional presence. Someone who needed hope would simply look into Stardust's gentle eyes and find it there. John Clark became one of the program's first junior volunteers, and eventually its first paid staff member when he graduated high school. Stardust saved my life, he told Sarah matter-of-factly. I was headed nowhere. Good. Now I know what I want to do with my life. I want to help other kids the way Stardust helped me. 2 years after, Sarah found Stardust tied up to die. Along the railroad tracks, she stood at the fence of the main pasture, watching the Silver Mare work with a young girl who hadn't spoken since witnessing her father's death in a mining accident. Stardust stood perfectly still as the girl leaned against her side, and Sarah could see the child's lips moving in silent conversation that only the horse could hear. Doc Harlan walked up beside her, moving more slowly these days, but still sharp as ever. You did something incredible here, Miss Sarah, he said. You took your own broken pieces and built something beautiful. Sarah shook her head. Stardust did that. I just followed where she led. That's not true. And you know it, Doc replied. Stardust couldn't have done any of this without you. You gave her a chance when the logical thing would have been to give up. You trusted in something you couldn't see or measure. That took courage. Sarah watched as the little girl finally smiled, still leaning against Stardust's solid warmth. I was so broken when I came back here, she said quietly. I thought I had nothing left to give, but Stardust showed me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes the broken places are exactly what make us able to help others. As the afternoon sun painted the hills in shades of gold and amber, Stardust lifted her head and looked directly at Sarah across the pasture. Their eyes met, and Sarah felt the same connection she'd felt that first morning in the fog. Two souls recognizing each other, understanding that they had both been saved. That evening, as Sarah completed her final rounds of the center, Stardust walked alongside her, their routine now as natural as breathing. Sarah ran her hand along Stardust's neck, feeling the strong, steady heartbeat beneath her palm. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, as she had done countless times over the years. "Thank you for choosing to trust me. Thank you for showing me that healing is possible. Thank you for giving me a purpose I never knew I needed." Stardust whinnied softly and pressed her head against Sarah's shoulder, and Sarah wrapped her arms around the horse's neck, breathing in the familiar scent of hay and horse and hope. Behind them, the lights of Hollow Creek twinkled in the gathering darkness. The town was different now. Not prosperous exactly, but alive in a way it hadn't been in decades. The Stardust Hope Center had brought people back to the area. New businesses had opened. Young people who had planned to leave were choosing to stay, and at the center of it all was a silver horse who had been left to die and a woman who had been lost. Together they had found their way home. As Sarah walked back to her cottage on the property, Stardust remained at the fence, a silver silhouette against the darkening sky. The mayor stood watch over the kingdom of hope she had built, not with force or flash, but with patience, gentleness, and an extraordinary capacity for forgiveness. And in that moment, looking back at Stardust's peaceful form, Sarah understood the most important truth of all. Sometimes salvation doesn't look like what we expect. Sometimes it comes on four legs with scars that tell a story of survival and eyes that offer a mirror to our own possibility for healing. This incredible story reminds us that hope can be found in the most unexpected places, and that broken souls often have the greatest capacity for healing others. If this story of Stardust and Sarah touched your heart, please give us a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of horses who change lives. And let us know in the comments what part of Stardust's journey resonated most with you. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful tales of hope, healing, and second chances. Thank you for being part of our community. And remember, no matter how broken you feel, there's always a path back to